welcome back to another week of episode number 70 of Behind the Lens. I'm film critic Debbie Lynn Elias. Some of you know me as Movie Shark DeBlore. You can find my reviews and interviews on print, online, on YouTube. Everything from TCM Film Festival for all you classic movie fans. All the red carpet interviews are up and out on the various social media. And you can check out some of those. Some really great interviews I'm very, very proud of. One with Eddie Muller, the Czar of Noir, president of the Film Noir Foundation, and a champion preservationist of film. Also, Ben Bradley Jr., one of the investigative reporters that covered the story for the Boston Globe that led to the Academy Award-winning film Spotlight. Also, Cary Grant's daughter, Jennifer. It only took me 5 years to get an interview with Jen, and I am beyond thrilled with that. And for all you Cary Grant fans out there, check it out because she has some really loving, wonderful things to say about her father. As much as in keeping with what all of the Cary Grant fans really have hoped to hear about him and his relationship with his daughter over the years. But we got plenty of other stuff that on the website, moviesharkdeblore.com, out on Examiner and Culver City Observer, British Weekly, Columbus Register, Beacon Times. Go look, you'll find me. But one place you can always find me is right here on Adrenaline Radio and Vice Radio every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time for Behind the Lens. And my trusty sound engineer, Brian, is here with me again.
Good morning.
Do we have the countdown?
Oh, of course we do.
Oh,
we have the countdown to episode 8.
Episode 8. This is Brian's purpose in life is to give us a countdown every week to episode 8 of Star Wars.
It's going to be released in the theater near you in 584 days, 12 hours, 57 minutes, and as soon as I'm done with this sentence, 2 seconds to go.
Ooh, and what about Rogue One that we all get to see this year?
Yeah, Rogue One is a lot sooner. It's 220 days, 12 hours and 57 minutes.
But the exciting thing about these films is that right now the buzz for Star Wars is being superseded by Captain America Civil War. Domestic weekend alone, $181.8 million. Globally, the film is just under $700 million. It will be the first film to hit $1 billion this year. Disney is on a roll between Zootopia, Captain America Civil War, and The Jungle Book, and we're not even 6 months into the year. So I would suggest now might be a good time for all of you to go buy some Disney stock. Just putting that out there. But in terms of today's show, it's going to be tough to top some of the past few weeks that we've had on Behind the Lens. Last week was absolutely phenomenal with the guys from LA River Band, LA River Music. They're absolutely phenomenal. They will be back later this summer as soon as their album is ready for release. They've been in the studio working on it, and that's almost done. Who knows? Nick Kroll's going to write a song for Brian, so that may even be on the album. So that'll be exciting. And then, of course, the filmmaking team from Call of the Void. Dustin Kahia, JT Alexander, and Mojan Arya. Those guys are just absolutely fabulous, incredible in-studio guests. And, yes, Dustin's already said he will come back. Mojan, I think, is off shooting, and I'm sure we can get JT back. And then, of course, the team from Always Worthy, who, they're always worthy of airtime here. And ironically, as luck would have it, one of those very special actors, Eric Edelstein, who joined us a few weeks ago with Ian Gomez and Amber Lee Colson, Eric is in a film that we're going to talk about today, STEVIE-D. Joining us at 11:15 will be writer, director, and actor Chris Cordone, and a character actor that I have long loved for decades. The last time I got to sit down and interview with him was in 2005 for a little independent film called Wannabe that also starred this actor turned director responsible for a film called The Help Tate Taylor. So, but we've got Spencer Garrett joining us along with Chris at 11:15 to talk about STEVIE-D, and at 11:30. Okay, one of the most interesting documentaries and unusual ones that I have seen in the past 28 years as a critic, FURSONAS, and it's all about the world of furries. And for those that don't know what furries are, they're people that wear furry animal suits. And we're going to hear all about it from writer-director, documentarian Dominic Rodriguez. This is his first film. And apparently he is also a part-time furry. So, as I said, in all the teasers this weekend, behind the lens is Fast and Furry. But before we get to our crime comedy and our furries, great movie opened up, and it keeps going wider. The Meddler, starring Susan Sarandon, and it's written and directed by Lorene Scafaria. Most of you may remember some of Lorene's prior films. She was responsible for the script for Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. She wrote and directed the critically acclaimed Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. So it was wonderful to get to sit down with Lorene again about The Meddler. Interesting about The Meddler is our protagonist is Susan Sarandon, recently widowed, moves to California to meddle in her daughter's life and everybody else's. And I have to say, Lorene is a very brave, brave woman, because the whole movie is based on her own mother, Gail. It is done with a loving touch, with a light touch, and it also, as we saw earlier this year with Hello, My Name is Doris and Sally Field, finally we're getting some roles for the mature woman in the quote-unquote ARP age. And for those of you that don't know, you get your ARP card at $50 if you pay your $12 a year. And you get great discounts, including coffee at Denny's, which is really good. But I digress. And Brian's in there laughing at me because he knows how much I love getting my discount at Denny's for coffee. But The Meddler is light, it is fun, it is frothy, it tackles some interesting issues. And there's an incredible love story going on between Susan Sarandon and J.K. Simmons, who is definitely channeling his Sam Elliott. And it is going wider. This was the perfect weekend, Mother's Day weekend, to see the film. If you did, hey, call in and let me know what you thought of it. 800-405-6425. But short of that, I want you to take a listen to excerpts of my exclusive interview with Lorene, starting with the character of Marnie itself. I mean, you can't just take your mother and plant her on a screen. It requires some finessing. Marnie is so real. She's so multidimensional.
Yeah.
And it's the best character you've ever written.
Oh, thanks. Well, I mean, it's the one I probably know the best. So, but yeah, no, it felt weird that the more specific I got with her, the more that people could relate. And I thought that was so interesting because to me, this was just so my mother. And generous to a fault, is going to go broke just offering things to people, and certainly did offer to pay for a friend's wedding who did not take her up on it. But it, she, it's the producer of this film actually. But, just like those connections that, someone like that can make when they're an open person, mm-hmm. and very generous and giving, and certainly at a time in their lives when they need to be giving more themselves, and it's something that would fulfill them as well. And so it was fun to, as much as I love talking about, good people in bad situations, it was really fun to think of this kind of person, the most maternal, most generous, most loving, open-hearted person who will do anything but date, who will do anything but go to lunch with a man, like God forbid. So, what can we see in a person that we haven't really seen before? Because obviously, there are a lot of movies about moms, and mm-hmm. there are a lot of, in theory, there are a lot of mother-daughter movies, though it's hard sometimes to even think of them, and one of the reasons it was probably hard for this movie to get made was, not only is it not really a traditional, mother-daughter movie, which was something I never wanted to do. I mean, that was something people were asking me to do, to make the Laurie character just as big and leave Marnie and go see Laurie without her. And I just thought, well, that you're missing the point entirely. The point is to like see what mom's doing when you're not calling her back, and like, and you know how funny she is, but also how lonely it is, and yeah, I mean that for me was so much more interesting, and if we had left her at any moment and gotten a break, I don't think it would have felt the same, you know.
Yeah, and what Lorene does, and I have seen so much growth in her as a director since, you know, she's done some television episodes for directing for New Girl since she finished Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. I see a great growth not only in her writing but in her directing. And so much of that we see conveyed with this great positivity. And in The Meddler, there is a sweet melancholy with loss and loneliness, but the entire film, it's as if your heart wants to wear a smiley face. It is that enchanting and that charming. And so much of that is due to her visual tone, her visual grammar. And coming into play there is her work with her cinematographer, Brett Powlick. Now, for those of you that saw Short Term 12, Brett was a cinematographer there. And it was a very filmic, grainy texture and palette. Totally different look with The Meddler. It's a testament to Brett's skills, but also to Lorene and Brett working in tandem to create this visual tonal bandwidth that mirrors the character of Marnie. So here's what she had to say about working with Brett and some of the technical aspects of the film.
This is an absolute delight.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Despite the fact that your mother is a meddler.
Of course she is. But it's also a delight. There's some delight in that.
There's some delight in that.
Yeah.
This, I see the growth in you as a writer. I see the growth in you exponentially as a director.
Thank you. Thank you.
With the cohesiveness of your storytelling and your editing process.
Oh, thanks.
Just absolutely fabulous.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And bringing Brett in to do your cinematography.
Yeah.
That I find an interesting choice.
Yeah. I was excited to work with him. I mean, I loved Short Term 12
and that's just it. Short Term 12 is great, but it had that textured filmic quality to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole film just embraces Marnie.
Yeah.
And the joy and the polish and the sun and the light.
Yeah.
There is not a moment of darkness.
Yep.
Or
That's
anything
right.
that is grainy. It is all, it's picture perfect.
But I love that, you know, we got to be handheld with a character that I feel like in a lot of films you don't see in this very personal sort of, sometimes you're far away from her and watching her like voyeuristically, and sometimes it's too close to her and it's a little claustrophobic. I mean, that was what he and I talked about a lot, sort of using the theme of boundaries in terms of the frame, you know, and when are we breaking boundaries ourselves, and when are we, you know, how are we watching her break boundaries and all that. So, but I was excited about, you know, I love movies like The Wrestler, you know, and I just thought, like, why not follow this woman around the Grove in that way, where you just are having fun with her, and it's lively, and it's adding a little reality to something that of course is very beautiful and poppy and kind of through her rose-colored glasses in a way, you know. But that was why I was so excited to collaborate with him on that.
Yeah, I mean, the cinematography is beautiful, and it tells its own story.
Thank you.
That visual grammar goes hand in hand.
I'm so glad.
With what you've written. I mean, it's a perfect marriage.
Thank you. That means.
And yes, indeed, it is a perfect marriage. So for anybody out there, as The Meddler is going wider each week, I can't encourage you enough. The positivity and the cheerfulness and the joy that you hear in Lorene's voice, you see that and you feel that unfold on screen with this film. It is fabulous, and Sarandon is at the top of her game. So please see The Meddler. And now, okay, Brian's playing with somebody on the phone. Who are you playing with, Brian? What are we doing, Brian? What are we doing? Do we know what we're doing? He's on the phone. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, do I have Chris and Spencer here?
Yes, you do.
This is beyond exciting. I am so thrilled. With me right now is Chris Cordone and Spencer Garrett, the incredible one of a kind.
Wow. Good morning to you.
Oh, guys, I am number one. I love STEVIE-D, but Spencer, I mean, this is the last time you and I actually got to do an interview. Was at Dances with Films for Wannabe back in 2005.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Yep. I kid you not. And you are just such an incredible character actor that I think every film you've been in that I review, I always put something in the review about your performance.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. That's very sweet.
I mean, it's.
I've been a little busy since Wannabe, which I'm happy to say.
You have just been you've been doing one-offs on Castle, Hawaii Five-0, Harry's Law, a recurring role in Satisfaction, Aquarius, Murder in the First, and of course then you get your little shots, even though they don't credit you, but I see your face there, like Air Force One, Iron Man 3, even in Hitchcock. I mean, you are one of the most eclectic, talented character actors today.
Well, I hope I was credited in Air Force One because I still get checks for $3.23 every day.
Well,
that was my first. I think that was my first movie actually. So. Well,
and I'm so glad I'm contributing to that because every time it is on cable, I watch it.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's that kind of movie. It does hold up. I'm proud of that one.
So, and now here you are working with.
How about STEVIE-D with the great Chris Cordone, and how about this cast?
I'm telling you, this cast, Chris, where did this come from, and how did you amass this incredible cast? You've got Spencer, you've got Kevin Chapman, you've got John Apria, just outstanding.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah, I think it is unusual, I'll say, for a smallish film to have such a deep cast. And that was, I think I'll actually attribute that partly to Spencer because he's been a friend of mine for a while, and he read the script very early on and attached very early, which when we finally got out to casting, having somebody who's so well known in town, by so many actors and agents and producers and whatnot, that gave the project some credibility. I had originally written the script for John and myself, and John and I had been friends since I got to town, a little over 10 years ago, and we met on this commercial set. It was a commercial where we get upstaged, like a father and son mafia team that gets upstaged by a chimpanzee, and it was
hate when that happens.
It was a little humiliating, to say the least. And we just kept looking for opportunities to work together, and I just started working on this story little by little, and it came together as it did. And then, as I said, Spencer, was very instrumental in helping us just kind of get the final push to get it made.
Well, and Eric Edelstein was just on the show a couple weeks ago for another. That he's somebody else who's working all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And Eric in the middle.
Hilarious in our movie too.
Oh my! As Carl, he's a scream, slouching there in the chair with the Hawaiian shirt and the sandals. And then with the news van scene just kills me. Kills me.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just, and then you get Hal Linden involved too.
Yeah, well, Hal's an interesting story. I mean, I wrote that part for a friend of mine who was, his name is David Graham, who was an older agent, casting director from the old days, I should say. And David was very kind to me when I got to town and tried to help me, and I kind of wrote that part for him as somebody who was trying to help but just couldn't because time had passed him by. And we were trying to cast it with somebody who wasn't going to be that kind of shuffling, bumbling, agent that we've seen on TV in a number of different movies and TV shows. And I heard Hal was guest disc jockeying a show on a radio station, a jazz program, and he had this I recognized his voice, and it was so virile, and it just. And then when I found out that it was him, I was like, wow, he's actually perfect for the part. And sure enough, we just called him, and he loved the script and the part, so he said he would do it.
He's just amazing. He's just an amazing man and an amazing performer.
Well, I watch all of the entire ensemble of this film, and there's a seamless meld with everybody, and you don't often see that in a film with this many moving parts, because you've got your script is intricate, and then Chris, you undertake not just writing, not just directing, not just producing, and acting, not just one role, but two roles.
I also catered the film.
Oh!
He actually did. He really did.
Okay.
Well,
He wore a lot of hats. It was incredible.
I wasn't originally intending to direct. That came about. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. I studied acting, and I was well on the path of being an actor. But when we got down to the very kind of limited resources and time to produce the film, it just was clear that the best choice to direct it was me, because I knew the story so well and I knew how to bring it in. So that came about late. And as far as the acting in two parts, I mean, that also, I really didn't design that to be some kind of tour de force or anything. I really felt that it was the characters that were going to drive this film, not so much the main guy, not so much the character of Michael, or Stevie for that matter, who's not in the film that much. I really felt, because Michael's sort of a vessel in the film, he doesn't really know what's happening, so he's not really the guy driving the story. It's the characters who are around him that are. So I felt that having that strong ensemble was really the key to the casting. And I think that's also how I was able to sell off on having such a big role myself without the kind of notoriety that a lead actor generally has.
Well, and that's where it's so important to have you in there, Spencer, and Kevin Chapman and John, the three of you in particular, surrounding the character of Stevie and the character of Michael.
Yeah.
The strength in there, which you buttress the story, you believe every minute what is going on. That Michael is an actor that looks like this,
right,
quote unquote mobster son, and he's filling in for him because son did something bad. Dad's trying to clean it up. And I got to say, you as the attorney, Spencer, are just a kick in the ass.
Well, you may have noticed I've played a couple of attorneys in my day.
Just a few.
Yeah, that was probably my 837th lawyer, but not but it was really just the story that attracted me. I mean, I read Chris's script a few years ago, and as soon as I read it, I said, this is shootable. I said, this is makeable as is now, and I don't know how many changes you made to it since I read it, but I mean, it was ready to start filming. So, and it was a fun part, and I was honored that he asked me to be, to climb on board in the very beginning. And I mean, the guy was a lawyer, yeah, but he was a lot of other things. I think his main job in the movie was being, this protective dad, to Tori's character.
And that's something we haven't seen from you before.
That's kind of true. I'm usually sort of there's a lot of bad guys, a lot of guys that are have a little bit of an edge to them. But this was really more about being the protective dad. So it was a nice role to undertake.
And I mean, I think you did beautifully with that. I was watching you, and I kept hearing my own dad's voice in my head. Was the kind of things that a father does say and do with his daughter.
Well, he sees her getting involved with this guy, and he doesn't know that Stevie is Michael and Michael is Stevie, and it's so he sees her getting involved with this particular guy who's known to be a bit on the shady side, and so he's wary, and of course his feathers are going to get ruffled, and of course he's going to be protective, and so it was pretty easy to play. I don't have kids myself, but I could certainly imagine if I was in that situation that I'd probably feel the same way. If my kid was getting involved with a guy that had some darkness and shady dealings, then it'd be pretty easy for the Papa Bear instincts to come out.
So I want to ask you, Chris, you have so many elements incorporated in the script. You touch on the mob bosses in Philly and Atlantic City, and I'm from Philly, so I know that whole scene really, really well. So, and but then you've got the big construction magnet. I don't know if you tapped, without mentioning any company names, but there was back in the 80s a huge, press coverage and media event with a company that started doing the subway construction that had ties similar to what Angelo DeMarco does. So I don't know how much of this...
Are you implying that construction companies might potentially have ties to the mob? That's outrageous.
Maybe.
That's an outrageous claim.
Maybe. But, you have all these touchstones that people can latch onto. Did this just come to you naturally, or did you go digging or doing any kind of research to tie things in?
Chris is actually in the mob.
Well, okay.
That's out of the bag now. Sorry, Chris.
Well, then you shouldn't have had any trouble getting financing.
I didn't want to write about the mafia. I didn't want to write about the entertainment industry. They're obviously both part of the script, and that was maybe because I just couldn't help myself.
And they're very similar, actually.
And they are very similar. All I need is a politician.
But you were also trying to avoid the cliche of the typical mob movie or the typical Hollywood fish out of water movie.
I mean, if you watch the whole movie, you realize it's not really a mob movie at all. It just has some of these elements in there. Part of that also, I think, was a nod to John, who, and Bobby Costanzo, too, who jokes about it, too. He plays the construction guy from AC, and, if you are Italian and you are of a certain age, you've been asked to play these guys a lot. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that's happened to me so much, but I did want to sort of nod to that. I also didn't want John to sort of be, his character to be sort of formally in any way. I wanted him to be one of those guys connected. And there are people like that. There are even people like that probably in L.A. So I had a couple of people in mind. I won't say who they are because I don't want them to think I'm accusing them of being, connected to organized crime. But I wanted him to have that veneer. Mm-hmm. And then, I think
as a white Irish guy from Santa Monica, I've probably played more mob guys than Chris has.
I think you have, Spencer. I think you have.
But mostly, I wanted a film that I thought people would understand on some level, and these are characters that we've seen before, and people will understand them, I think, and latch onto them. We kind of like this genre. I just wanted it to be, I wanted it to go in a different direction. I wanted it to have an authentic point of view about L.A., about fathers and sons, and I felt that if I could bring that out as the writer, then I think we would have something that was different. Mm-hmm.
Well, and what you also do is you get, with your locations, you get a really great cross-section of different areas of Los Angeles. I recognize some of the places, up there on San Vicente Boulevard, at the law offices. So was
Dolce Vita restaurant, which is a classic Italian place in Beverly Hills, which is a very well-known restaurant.
It's not easy. It's not easy to shoot in L.A. Anymore, unless you have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. We were lucky. We were gifted a few very good locations, like La Dolce Vita. The art museum was gifted to us. That's in Pasadena, the Pasadena Museum of California Art. And then we for the most part shot just in places where you can't get into trouble. There were a few places we had to pay for, like the residence in the hills. We had to pay for that, and there's a few things we had to steal. Quite frankly.
Uh-oh.
I think
don't tell anybody.
I think we did a pretty good job. I had to find places that looked like Las Vegas. I had to find places that looked like they could have been a hotel in Beverly Hills, and those aren't easy places to get.
No, I mean, that's one thing that really struck me, because you also didn't go to the typical locations.
I think that was also part of the fact that we couldn't afford it, and that I wanted it to look a little bit different. I wanted to show a different side of L.A. that people who live here might see, not people who visit here.
It was true independent filmmaking at its most elemental, because you have to, like Chris said, you have to steal locations. Sometimes you get lucky and you get gifted locations, but a lot of times you're doing it guerrilla style. And sometimes when you're doing the guerrilla style, or grabbing locations here and there that you don't necessarily have permits for, those are the ones that usually work out the best in the finished product, because you find these happy accidents that happen and you end up in a location that you wouldn't normally have expected, and it turns out great. So this was obviously a low budget film, but everything that Chris found ended up on the screen in terms of production value and production quality. It looks like a higher budget film than it really is, which is a testament to Chris and this great little team that he put together.
Yeah, our DP Paul McIlvaine is one of the most sought after lighting technicians in town. So he really knew how to set this thing up.
Yeah, I mean, it's visually, your visual tone is absolutely beautiful. Paul did an amazing job, and as Spencer just said, the production values on here belie as I call them, low budget, no budget films.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, just gorgeous. Now, was the premiere at Newport Beach Film Festival?
The West Coast premiere. We had our premiere. The first festival that we played in was in Sedona, the Sedona International Festival, and that's a film that the festival that we also won. Very fortunately, and that was our official world premiere. And then we played in Sarasota, and were very well received there. And then the last festival was Newport, which was our West Coast premiere.
I mean, it's just. I mean, I think the film is fabulously done, guys.
Thank
you. Thank you so much.
It's very entertaining.
That means a lot.
I mean, I'm such a huge fan of, mafia films and comedies, and you don't see that many. So to see something like this, it is so well thought out, well constructed, well written, and with high production values. It's a treat.
We're trying to spread the word and get it out there to the people so they can dig it as much as you do.
So now, do you have any more festivals coming up, or any kind of distribution deals? Digital.
We're talking to distributors right now, and we have a very good sales agent who's behind the film and thinks big things of the film. Another connection to Spencer. They rep the film Spencer was in called Below the Beltway a few years back, which had another great cast and did very well, both in festivals and in distribution. So it's just a very difficult market right now because there's a lot of platforms. They're not all, they don't all bring tremendous visibility, but there's a lot of platforms. There's also a lot of content. It's an unusual time that anyone can make a film because of the technology right now. That doesn't mean they're all necessarily making good films or highly entertaining or highly.
Tell me about it.
But it's also a good thing that there is so much access to, because the technology is so cheap that it's encouraging a lot more younger filmmakers to get out there with their, whether it's an iPhone or a Red or whatever, to go out there and be creative and make films. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Some of them turn out great and some of them don't turn out so great, but at least it's encouraging people. I mean, now with smartphones and the new technology that changes all the time. I mean, everybody's a videographer, everybody's a photographer, everybody's, whether, we live in this sort of Instagram, Twitter age now, and everybody's taking selfies of themselves and putting up pictures. But every once in a while, you see something that comes through and you go, oh, that guy's got a good eye. That guy's got an interesting visual style. And I think it does lend itself to, people expressing themselves creatively, through the visual arts. I think it's a good thing.
Now, let me ask you, Spencer, because you have seen the industry change so much over the course of time that you have been acting. Is it helping or hindering with so many platforms out there and this, inundation of pardon the pun, wannabe filmmakers?
I don't know. I think in a sense for actors it's a good thing because there is so much content out there and there are so many platforms. There's thanks to Netflix and House of Cards, I think that sort of broke the mold wide open. And you've got all of these streaming platforms now with Hulu and Netflix and Amazon, and everybody's getting in on the act. So it's creating a lot more employment opportunities for actors. I think is good. And I think probably the flip side of that coin is that there is so much content. There's such an enormous amount of content. There's almost too much television out there now. There's almost too many things to watch. But it's, at the end of the day, I think for me, it's a good thing because it's giving a lot of filmmakers an opportunity to express themselves. And So if you hear about a show, whether it's Penny Dreadful on Showtime or whatever, you've got to seek out these shows and find them. Like I just got turned on to a show called Rectify that's on, I think, on Netflix that people were sort of muttering about. I was like, wow, this is really good. You have to find them, but then you see these wonderful actors getting to do really great great things. So I think it's a good thing. Giving filmmakers more opportunities.
So now, what's next for both of you? Chris, are you working on another project now? Are you going to sit back and see how this plays out?
Well, a little bit of both, I guess. I have two more projects that I'd like to get into development, and they're I'd say one is ready to go if we had the right people around it, and the other one I'm still working on. I'm interested in this kind of noir-ish world, and they both are kind of in that world as well. One is has sort of a surfing storyline to it, although I don't surf. But it's sort of I call it a surfing noir thriller, and another one is about a private eye in Los Angeles in the early '70s, and a lot will depend on how this movie gets reviewed and received, how it gets seen, because it's just very difficult to get films done or into development if you don't have that kind of reputation. So that's really what I'm hoping for. And of course, if the phone rings and somebody wants to hire me for something, I'm available.
And what about for you,
hear
Spencer?
that, Internet?
Yes, hear that, everybody. Yes.
Yes.
And what do you have coming up, Spencer?
I just finished season 2 of Aquarius, this kind of dark, twisted little show on NBC with David Duchovny about Charles Manson in the 70s. It's
fabulous.
We just finished up season 2 of that. And then next week I've got this film called All the Way with Bryan Cranston and an incredible cast on HBO about LBJ and the civil rights movement with Anthony Mackie and Melissa Leo and Brad Whitford. So that's coming out in a couple weeks, and so I'm going to be out there beating the drum for that. So.
Oh my God! Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I mean, this has been a real treat. Spencer, I don't want to go 11 years and not talk to you again.
Yeah, let's not. Listen, any Chicago Med fans out there, Torrey DeVito fans, mob movie fans, Hollywood movie fans, when you hear about our movie out there, find it, and if hopefully everybody will love it as much as you did, and as much as we did making it.
Well, and this show will start rebroadcasting later this afternoon. It'll be on iTunes tomorrow, and video of the show intercut with some beautiful stills from the film.
Oh, terrific!
Will be on YouTube and my website by the end of the week. And for whatever reason, there's some outlet in China that actually embeds my entire show on their site. So you'll be in China, too.
Right on.
Right.
I'm big in China.
That's where it's at.
Huge in China.
That's where it's at.
Guys, thank you again so much. And I hope you'll both come
back.
back.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye-bye. And that was Chris Cordone and Spencer Garrett talking about STEVIE-D. And you'll hear more about that later this week. But right now, I am thrilled to welcome one of the most interesting filmmakers to come around in a while, Dominic Rodriguez. Hi, Dominic. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my God. I've never seen a documentary like FURSONAS.
That is an amazing thing to hear.
I didn't know what to expect. I knew a little bit about furries thanks to a CSI episode some years ago.
Oh, yeah. That's the infamous CSI episode.
Yes, Fur and Loathing. And then there have been references on other, 30 Rock did something, Entourage did something a number of years ago. But to actually see your approach to this world and to this culture, fascinating. What is it that made you get up one day and say, I think I want to make a documentary about this?
It was definitely not like a one-day thing. It was just like a continual, somebody should make a documentary about this. I don't want to do it because I don't want to touch this potential point. This is way too complicated. But then, it just was like kind of following me and nobody else was doing it. And Pittsburgh is where I live, and that's where the largest furry convention in the world is.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of felt like it was meant to be.
Now, how did you approach? Because this is your first film of any kind, or just first documentary?
First documentary. I went to film school and I did shorts and stuff, but this is definitely the first thing that feels real.
Mm-hmm. So, how did you approach this? Did you develop a theme from the start, or did you start doing interviews and then in the editing room start seeing a theme and a construction developing?
It was the word I use is organic, because it was just like, I didn't know what I was doing for like 90% of this, It was just me trying to, the big thing is that I wanted it to be real, and I didn't want it to be, a PR film, but I didn't want it to be exploitative. I just wanted it to kind of be sympathetic. And so I didn't want to impose a narrative on it that I thought didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So for a long time, it was just interviews, just trying to get people to open up with me and just talk, and just so I could get to really know who these people were. But then eventually, it's like 2 years later, and there's really no story, and it's us trying to figure this thing out. And I was kind of fine with it being just this plotless, weird thing. But then eventually a story did take shape, and it was kind of an amazing story. So that was kind of luck, kind of just from looking at it for long enough.
What was the linchpin that gave you the story, the story thread? I have to wonder and think it might have been Boomer.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a combination. Boomer, definitely. The whole kind of tension with how furries are portrayed in the media, with like authority figures in the fandom, and then also sort of, even though it's not a huge part of the movie, kind of my own presence was a turning point as well, because I didn't want to necessarily be in the film, even though I'm a furry. I was really hung up on this not being my story, but it kind of was unavoidable. In order to be honest, I had to kind of show a little bit of that part of myself as well.
Mm-hmm. So how did you go about finding the individuals to interview?
It was like in the beginning, I just sent hundreds of messages out to people that had costumes. So not every furry has a fursuit, but I wanted to talk to fursuiters because it just showed that they were passionate, that they wanted to take that extra step. And I don't know, it was cinematic, and it's something that I'm interested in. So basically, whoever would get back to me was almost a convenience. I didn't know a ton about their lives. It was just sort of like, if they were passionate and wanted to talk to me and I could drive to them, then I would make an effort to go see them.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second half, there were sort of some holes in the story that I sought out specific people in order to kind of flesh out that story. So people like Shoe Fox and Varka and Uncle Kage, those are people that I specifically was looking for in order to kind of complete what we had started.
Well, the Uncle Kage sequences are absolutely mind-boggling.
Yes.
I can't tell if he supports the furry fandom or if he's against it, because he's so vitriolic and polarizing.
Yeah, he's definitely a very polarizing figure in the community. Everybody has an opinion, even if your opinion is that you don't care, but everybody more or less knows about him, and they fight about what he stands for, definitely.
Well, and that comes through loud and clear as you incorporate some of his wine streams into the documentary. Would he not agree to be interviewed for this?
Yeah, well, we couldn't agree on terms, basically, so he would be in it if he could see the finished film and recommend changes, and then if I don't do those changes, then he gets to pull himself out. And it was it kind of amounted to an editorial amount of control. So that was something that wouldn't fly for me. It's just sort of the movie so much about the fandom, and the movie are both about me expressing myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just something that I couldn't express.
So now, for people that aren't familiar with the furry community or the furry fandom, how would you describe it to people being introduced as the first time?
Yeah, the most all-encompassing definition that you can say is it's people that are fascinated by anthropomorphic animals, so animals with human characteristics, cartoon animals, that interest. The reason why I think that definition for me doesn't really do it justice is because there's so much more to it than just this kind of bland interest. It's like it's an identity for a lot of people, and it's this very tightly knit community. And there's just really interesting things about it, like the fact that everybody kind of seems to know everybody in this culture, even though there's like thousands of us. It's really easy to kind of, I don't know, get like a reputation because you're creating these characters, and there's such an online presence. So it's really cool because you can make friends really quickly, but you can also drama tends to spread really quickly as well.
I mean, I find the information that you were imparting and the different people that you were speaking with, you know, it's like from all walks of life. But something that I find really charming is that, you know, a lot of the furries, you know, it's like a cosplay. It's like, you know, going to Comic-Con in a cosplay, and little kids just think, you know, it's so cute because you've got adults looking like these adorable storybook characters. Woodland creatures. Is that more or less the prevalent image that the furry fandom tries to portray?
Yeah, it's just so complicated because it's something different to everybody involved, and so I think that there's kind of an effort to downplay how much it means to a lot of people and sort of make it more of a kind of sort of a hobby, and for a lot of people it is just a hobby. But I think it's just really, really, really important to the people that are in it in a way that's almost hard to describe. And then I think also people look at it and I think it looks like Disneyland, and I think that's why when you start talking about things like sexuality and stuff like that, it can freak people out because they just don't know what to do with them. But it's really not that scary. It's just individual people with their different interests.
So now, what was the biggest learning curve for you? Having gone to film school, having made short films, and now you jump into this feature-length documentary. What was the learning curve for you?
Definitely, like, when I think about that, it's like, I always love just kind of editing and making movies, and I love talking to people and everything, but I guess just the fact that it's real people's lives that you're stepping into, and it's one thing to think about, oh, this would be good for a movie, or this would be a really good scene, but just the fact that I'm always kind of having to check myself and remind myself that, like, these are real people, and they all have, like, a stake in this, and it's just, I don't know, I almost get, like, emotional when I think about it, because it's like, they're not, like, just characters, you know, they're human beings, and it's my responsibility to kind of, like, do justice to them, but then also kind of say what I want to say, and not, you know, be too, I can't, like, compromise, you know, so it's just kind of a weird balancing act, and I still don't really know how to do it, and figuring it out.
Now, how does that impact you when you get in the editing room? Does that make it more difficult when you're editing?
Yeah, I think test screenings were very beneficial because I think when you're in the editing room, you kind of have to just put on the filmmaker hat and think, like, well, you know, how is this all going to function together as a narrative? And, like, you know, you set something up and then you pay it off and things like that. And then it really was very helpful to start showing it to people and get other perspectives on it because you can almost get sort of blind to the thing. And you can, like, artistically justify anything, you know. So I think, for instance, the film makes no secret of the fact that we disagree with Uncle Kage and his media policy. And we toned it back a little bit because originally I was much more ruthless in how much I disagreed with him.
Well, while you were laughing at him, that was good.
I'm glad you like that. Not everybody likes that, but I like it.
I liked it because it's you laughing balance. It was a great counter to the vitriol and the profanity that was coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, and that's just, I couldn't believe that he said it. I mean, it was just 100% genuine. That was how it went down.
It there are moments of great disbelief when you actually hear somebody talking like that about a group that he professes to love and champion. So I mean, you really raised some interesting discussion and and people are seen in a very different light because they definitely, some of them are definitely not being seen the way they think they're being seen. And that's that's a testament to you for bringing that out within the editing and the construct of the film. So now,
I just appreciate so much how this is coming across, and ideas are actually finding their way to, especially non-furry audiences, because I think that a lot of furries are just so skeptical of what people who aren't furries are going to think. They think they're just going to see one thing and then they're going to judge the entire community by this one thing. And I just like to give people more credit than that. And I can just tell from the interviews that I do that people they're understanding that it's complicated.
Yeah. Oh, you definitely get that part across from beginning to end. There is no doubt that the structure within the furry world is very complicated. But now, when did you know that the film were you satisfied with the film after all of your test screenings and re-edits? How long was that process before you then said, okay, it's done, I'm going to throw it out there on the festival circuit?
I remember a year before it was actually done, I had that moment where I was just it's done, no more, it's been 3 years, I can't take it anymore, this is it. If people don't like it, that's too bad, this is it. And then that was right when we were kind of showing it to the production studio, Animal, and they were just kind of, they let us use their facilities, but they weren't really our official production studio yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I showed it to the who was now the executive producer, Danny, and then Steve Hoover, who's the story consultant, and they were just this is so almost good. If you filmed for one more year, then you'd actually have a movie. And from the moment they said it, I knew that they were right, and I knew that we were finally getting somewhere. And there were just more holes that needed to be kind of filled in and fleshed out, and more questions that needed to be answered. So a year later, I still think that the film is it's just how I feel, and I think that it felt like it was honest, and it felt like other people were understanding it. And eventually, you just gotta stop. And 4 years felt like a long enough time.
So now, how did you feel? What was your first festival that the film got into? Was it Slam Dance?
It was Slam Dance, yeah.
So how excited were you, number one, when your film was actually accepted into Slam Dance, but then you also won the Spirit of Slam Dance Award?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It's just the kind of thing, again, working on something like this for so long, I had to be ready for people to not really care about it or not like it or whatever, because I had to be at peace with what I was. And so the fact that it's sort of being acknowledged and understood and appreciated is just
Mm-hmm.
surreal. It's not something I expected, and so it's just right.
So now, what did you, in the process of making Fursonas, what did you learn about yourself, Dominic?
It was very it was a process of self-discovery for me over the course of making the film, because when I started it, I didn't identify as a furry. I'd been into this stuff kind of secretly for a long time, and I'd been looking at it for a long time, but it wasn't something that was an active part of my day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
But as I worked more on the movie, I got more into the community, and now it's completely integrated with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of it's just weird that this used to be the thing that nobody knew that nobody knew about me, and now it's the thing that I'm known for. So it's just been a crazy sort of reversal in the last couple of years. And so I've just become a lot more comfortable sort of with who I am and what I'm into, and it's just, so it's a very special film to me, and I'm not sure how I will ever work on something as personal as this again.
So now, do you have anything else in the pipeline that you're working on, or are you just taking a step back now? And because I know Fursonas is available on iTunes tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So will you be actively, promoting this? Are you working on a new project? What's next for Dominic Rodriguez?
Mm-hmm. So right now I've been trying to get out to more furry conventions, and the cool thing is I feel like the community outreach is a big part of this process, so it's important that I make an appearance at a lot of these events and do Q&As and talk about it, because the movie's supposed to be about starting a conversation. So I'm not quite ready to let it go yet, because I think that the conversation has just started, and I think I need to be there at least in the beginning, and then after that I can kind of let it go and let people do with it what they want. But I want to keep doing documentary work, and put myself into both furry and non-furry projects after this.
Do you see yourself stepping into narratives at all?
Love that. I mean, it's the kind of thing where that was what I originally wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I do prefer documentary work because it feels like I don't always know the answer for like what to tell an actor or how to. But like with documentaries, I always have questions. Like I never run out of questions, and so like that curiosity is something that I think helps me on that end more.
Well, so it's just on iTunes tomorrow. Is expanding anywhere else? Any other kind of VOD platform or Hulu or Netflix or anything?
It should be expanding after that to Amazon and Xbox and Google Play and like lots of stuff. So that's really cool.
Fabulous. Well, Dominic, thank you so much for joining me on Behind the Lens today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is for me.
Oh, this is, again, a very unique, very interesting documentary. And I, for one, can't wait to see what you come up with for an encore.
Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you again for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, Dominic. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Dominic Rodriguez, writer and director of FURSONAS, available on iTunes tomorrow. We are going to take, even though we're almost near the end of the show, we're going to take a quick commercial break and then come back and do a sign-off. So just sit tight, and we'll be right back. Behind the Lens is sponsored in part by the Culver City Observer. Located in the heart of Screenland, Culver City Observer is available in print and online at www.culvercityobserver.com. And welcome back to Behind the Lens. We are almost out of time. But very quickly to recap here, be on the lookout for STEVIE-D, written, directed, produced, and starring Chris Cordone, and a cast of an incredible cast of character actors and stars that you have seen on TV and film for years, including Spencer Garrett, who was also with us, and Kevin Chapman, Hal Linden, John Aprea, who has been in almost every mob movie and TV show known to mankind, in addition to Tori DeVito, who is the female love interest in the film. She gets to shine. And also, coming out on iTunes tomorrow is FURSONAS. Interesting documentary by Dominic Rodriguez. And that's going to be all the time we have today. Next week, I think we're going to have a lot of interview excerpts, including part of my exclusive with Whit Stillman, who has written one of the most fascinating screenplays in a while, Love and Friendship, based on Jane Austen's Lady Susan and starring Kate Beckinsale. I sat down with him the other day, and fabulous and fascinating and fun. So until next week, I'm Debbie Elias, Behind the Lens.